Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhigyaswarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yat surayah tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha dhamna swena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation, made of threefold gunas, appears in him as though real, like water in a mirage. Being eternally self effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking the nectar day after day. So now we are entering the 28th chapter of the 4th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We are in the middle of the parable of Puranjana as narrated by Narada to the king Prachina Barhi. So we saw this Puranjana, who is a king who roamed around looking for the perfect city for enjoyment, found the city with 9 gates, entered with this beautiful woman, got lost in infatuation, and was going to various lands through the various gates in the city for enjoyment. And he was completely being a puppet of this queen. And meanwhile, 2 armies, one Gandharvas, 360 men and 360 women, headed by the Gandharvas, attacked him on the one side, and then Kala Kanya, the daughter of time, marrying fear, Bhaya, and with their army attacking on the other side his kingdom. So we now continue. Narada says, with this army, the lord of the Yavanas, that is Bhaya or fear, attacked the kingdom and ran over the kingdom with great force. And he took possession of the kingdom with this great force, and unable to withstand his force, the kingdom was completely ransacked and the entire population was oppressed. And the city being completely tormented like this, Puranjana, who was totally attached to his kingdom also, was greatly suffering. He felt great distress. He had a large family, as we already saw, and he had a great sense of I and mineness around his wife, his family, his kingdom, and now they are all being tormented. So he was suffering a great distress. He was caught in pleasures of the sense, and therefore he had no strength to be able to fight these forces. The Gandharvas and the Yavanas are both attacking on both sides, and his city is destroyed. And as his city is getting destroyed, the very people who he was attached to, they lose all respect for him, his sons, his grandsons, even his ministers, and his very wife, who he was so attached to, they all grow indifferent to him and disrespect him because he is seen as a very weak king, unable to defend his own territory, and therefore they do not respect him anymore. And he is meanwhile so weak, he has been only hankering after senses of enjoyment, objects of enjoyment, and he was always caught in this idea of I and mine, and in affection for his wife and his city and the people. And now he sees all of this is taken over by the 2 armies of Gandharvas and Yavanas and devastated by them. So he was completely distressed and devastated. And meanwhile, the serpent god he had called Prajagara, who was fighting this army of the Yavanas. He was unable to withstand the fight either, so unable to defend the city, he ran away. And this Puranjana, now he is in his last throes, this king, and even in his last throes, he was completely perverted by the thoughts of I and mine with respect to his body, his house, his wife, his sons, daughters, grandsons, and then his family, his kingdom, his treasury, his wealth, all of it. So he was only thinking of that. He started thinking that he's going to die now, and all his worries were, when I am gone to the other world, when I am gone, how would this widowed wife handle herself? How would she eke out an existence? She is dependent on me. So this is how people normally think, that they think they are indispensable, and they think it's only because of them that everyone around them is surviving, when in reality nobody is indispensable. So he seems to think here also that he is indispensable to his wife and his children. So he starts worrying, how will this widowed woman be able to eke out an existence? She has depended on me all her life. I have given her food, I have clothed her, I have taken care of her beautifully, and now if I am gone, she'll be awfully frightened. She has been completely dependent on me, so how will she be able to manage? Then he started speculating more and more. He started thinking that perhaps she will give up her body too after I die. But if she does so, then what will happen to all the helpless sons and daughters? Where will they go? How will they survive? They will all die like the inmates of a ship that is caught in an ocean which is broken. So in this way, he starts speculating about what will happen after he is gone. Even now, at this point, when he is about to face death, he is caught in so much attachment that all he could think of was what will happen to his wife, what will happen to his children, what will happen to his kingdom. And he was so worried about all of this. And with a feeble mind, he was so worried and afraid when he was seized upon by the attacking army, the Yavanas, and he was taken like a beast. They took him like a slave. They tied him up with a rope and dragged him. And when he was unable to withstand them, he was finally given to the force that they applied, and eventually he died. And even when he died, all he could think of was this wife of his, because he was clinging to her through attachment and infatuation. So, what is said is, after he dies, he goes to hellish places where he faces suffering at the hands of all the sacrificial animals he had killed. So, this is the other aspect of this lesson that Narada is giving, that one engages in sacrifices, especially when it involves killing all these animals, they get back, and the suffering is in turn meted out to the one who did the sacrifices in an unregulated way. So, this fellow, it is said, he suffered all suffering, or all pain at the hands of the very animals he had slaughtered in the hellish regions. And then, after some time, because his very last thought was the beautiful woman he was married to, he was reborn as a beautiful girl. So it is said that one is born with whatever is the last desire or the last thought, because that is the unfulfilled desire or thought he has. And because he had the thought of this beautiful girl, his wife, he was now in turn born as a beautiful girl. So this goes to show that the body, including gender, is something that changes, and it can go from one birth to another, and it is not a fixed entity. So the identity of one, as even a man or a woman, is rooted in simply bodily conception, because this fellow, we can see, went from being a man as a king in one life to being a beautiful girl in the next life because of his attachment to the beautiful girl. So he was born as a princess now in the kingdom of Vidarbha, and it is said that the king of Pandya kingdom is the kingdom that is in the south. It is in the present day of Madurai in the south. And from there was a king called Malayadhwaja who had conquered many cities, and he was offered this princess of Vidarbha as a prize for his valor and in order to make peace with him, because he was a great king. And so he married this princess of Vidarbha, who is no other than the king from the last life. And together, this king of Pandyas and this princess, they had a daughter and then 7 sons, and they had in turn many other grandsons and so on. It is said that Agastya, the great sage, married the first daughter of the king and this princess. And then the king, Malayadhwaja, he now, after some time, he decided to give his kingdom away to his 7 sons. Now, this is seen all along in Bhagavatam everywhere, that all the kings, however great they were, at certain time they retire, giving away the kingdom and the royal duties to their successors and then retire to the forest. And that's exactly what Malayadhwaja did. He gave away the kingdom to his 7 sons, and he retired to the Kulachala mountain along with his wife, which is the princess of Vidarbha. And he was devoted to worshipping Krishna, and therefore he abandoned his house, his sons, his luxuries, and all of that. And the daughter of Vidarbha, this princess, also being devoted to her husband now, abandoned everything and followed her husband. And they went to this beautiful forest, which is by the river Tamraparni. It's a beautiful river that flows even now in the very south of Bharat. So there he took a small place by the forest, and cleansing all the impurities of his body and mind with the holy waters of the rivers there, and living on fruits and seeds and so on, and with very basic necessities and the water that is there in the river. He practiced austerities, and he was able to completely establish himself in pure beingness. He was able to go past the dualities of heat and cold, and hunger and thirst, and pleasurable and painful, and he was viewing everything with the same eye, and all his latent desires were eradicated, his senses were regulated, his breath was regulated, his mind was regulated. He was completely in a natural discipline, and thereby he recognized his oneness as the supreme being, as Brahman. And he sat motionless like this, like still, in this place for a long time, realizing the Supreme Being and devoted to the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is the very light of the being itself. And with this wisdom that was imparted to him from within his heart by none other than the Supreme Being Sri Hari, he was able to completely remain indifferent to everything else. So it is said that just as a man who even sees his head being knocked off in a dream wakes up to recognize that he is separate from all the activities of the dream, similarly, this king was able to see everything as simply like activities in a dream, and he, as the witness, that is witnessing everything as the activities of the mind. And thereby, with this supreme wisdom flowering in his heart by the grace of the Supreme Being Sri Hari, he was able to remain indifferent to all external events, and being established fully in the pure consciousness of being, and realize that he is one with the Supreme Being is one with him. It is said, Pare Brahmani Chatmanam Param Brahma Tathatmani. So he identified himself as Brahman, and Brahman has him because of this realization. And Vidarbha's princess, Vaidarbi, she is called, she also, who was looking upon her husband with great devotion, was very much living the same life. She was emaciated through fasting, not eating great food, and she was always by her husband as he was engaged in all these austerities. And eventually, this husband Malayadhwaja as we saw, established himself in the Supreme Being, and he left his body, and she was there right next to him. He was very gloriously able to leave his body sitting upright, as many yogis do, sitting upright in the lotus pose. He left his body, and she did not even realize for some time that his life has left the body, and she was serving him, and then recognized a little while later that his body was still, and he had left the body. And then she, of course, was very much in grief for some time that at having lost the company of her beloved husband. And then after some time, she then composes herself and decides that now that he is gone and he was my very life, let me also give up my life. And with this intent, she lights up a pyre to jump into the fire. And as she is doing that, appears a great wise sage who looks very serene and who speaks very sweet words of consolation to her. And he addresses her. He says, this wise sage says, "O lady, who are you? And whose daughter are you? And who is this man lying on the funeral pile who has been burned, whose death you are mourning? Do you recognize?" Finally, he says, "Do you recognize that I am your friend?" So now comes Avijnata. As we saw, this king Puranjana had a mysterious friend, Avijnata, the unknowable. And this unknowable friend shows up now that she has taken another birth as this princess, and now she is in grief. This unknowable friend shows up and he says, "Can you recall that you had a friend called Avijnata and you left him to look for enjoyments?" Then he reminds her and he says, "You and I were like swans living peacefully and in great bliss, but you somehow got a desire to enjoy earthly enjoyments, to enjoy carnal pleasures, and therefore you left me and you went looking for a suitable abode for enjoyment, and you found this place which had 5 pleasure gardens, 9 entrances, 9 gates, and 3 walls, and made of 5 elements. And you met a beautiful woman there, and you were enamored by her, and with the objects of the 5 senses and the 9 gates of the city drawing you out for enjoyment all the time, you were caught up there, and then you were completely bewildered by your own mind, and therefore you lost consciousness of who you are, and overpowered by the woman who was your wife, and being attached to her, you forgot your true nature. And through that kind of association, you got reduced to a wretched state, and then you are born as this princess now, and look at the grief you are in right now. And then he goes on to say, "You are not the daughter of the king of Vidarbha. This hero who has given up his body is not your husband, and you are neither the king Puranjana that you took yourself to be in the last birth and held captive in the city of 9 gates. All of this is simply an illusion under which you first thought of yourself as a man, and now you are thinking of yourself as a woman. You are neither." And then he reminds this woman who was the man before and says with great love and compassion, "Realize that you and I are the same. Our true nature is divine." He says beautifully, "Aham bhava nacha anyastvam tvamevaham vichakshva bhoho." He says, "I am you and you are none other than me. You are just the same as I. The wise do not perceive any difference." So, here, of course, at the physical level, they are two different people, this man Avijnata and this woman, the princess, who was the king before Puranjana. So he is not referring to the physical difference. There it would be silly to say, "I am you and you are me." What he refers to is that the pure awareness, which is the source of all manifestation. So, even the physical manifestation of the world, the body, and then the mental manifestation of thoughts, all of these are appearing only within the field of awareness. And it is awareness that seems to manifest diversity, just as one sees diverse objects in a dream. And therefore, what this sage Avijnata says is, you and I are essentially one, being the supreme awareness. All there is only the supreme awareness that alone takes all these various forms, such as the body of the princess now or the body of the king before. Because you were lost in identification with the body as me, you were lost in enjoyments, and you were then lost in suffering, and now you are paying the price for this through this life as a woman here suffering. So he says, therefore, that you have to recognize your true nature as divine, and that is the essence of taking this inquiry, and that is the whole purpose of living itself. And therefore, being admonished thus by this sage, the princess now instantly recognized that she or he, now interestingly, she was a princess, but she was a king in the past life. So she recognizes that she is neither a princess nor a king, neither a woman nor a man, and she recognizes herself as pure consciousness, which was simply lost due to false identification. And having recognized her true nature, she was now established in truth as pure consciousness. So, with this, Narada concludes the story and says, O King Prachina Barhi, I have imparted this entire essence of spiritual truth to you through the story. I hope you are able to understand it. Now, having said this, Narada concludes his discourse, but we will see that Prachina Barhi is still not very clear on various aspects of the symbolism in the story. So he will ask Narada to explain it further, and in the next chapter, Narada will great detail explain all the various aspects of the symbolism involved in the story and how it relates to every one of us. So for now, he ends the story by bringing to the auspicious point of this woman finally getting established in self realization. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.